Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and this is the Storyteller Forecast for Gemini for August 2015. Check out my website, aspiritualspark.com, where you can sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community, and you can see all of my current offerings, including my new webinar, Unleash Your Money Magnet. So what's going on in August? We have the things that are going on in August affecting us in August, and we also have some things going on in September that are affecting us in August. In September, which we'll talk about in the September report more at length, we have the eclipses coming. We call them the fall eclipses, even though it's not officially fall when they start, but in that time of the year, we have the spring ones and the fall ones, that happen early in the year and happen later in the year. And it's like the planting cycle. So the things that happened in the springish eclipse cycles are making themselves manifest, the stories being told through the time until we start having this influence from the next set of eclipses, which are then planting the seeds for this following spring harvest. So the eclipses that happen in September, all eclipses have an orb of energy of about 6 weeks before they actually happen, where we're starting to be influenced by them. So up from just right at the beginning of August, you can start to have news, information that comes in. Often it seems like it comes out of the blue, that changes your course. Eclipses are notorious for, astrologers will often call it corrections. So if you're heading in a certain way, then this eclipse comes and makes you head in a different way. And sometimes it doesn't feel like that direction you're heading into is the right one, but there's a wisdom in the bigger picture that is hard to tell sometimes when you're in the minutia of dramatic experiences. So be on the lookout for that type of news that comes in and know, okay, this is eclipse energy. There's this story that's starting to be told that's going to have this period of time until next spring that it's carried out. There's also a bigger picture with eclipses. It's the length of time that the eclipses in those certain signs are occurring for. So this Pisces Virgo eclipse season was a long season. It started in the beginning of 2015, and we have our last Pisces Virgo eclipses at the beginning of 2017, which has an influence through towards the end of 2017. So a lot of things that are happening now can also have this bigger story that's going through 2017. So this 2-ish year cycle as a bigger picture. And then within that, there's sub pictures based on the different eclipse cycles. So look for those rhythms in your life, because it's really cool when you start to notice them. What else do we have going on? We have a huge concentration of energy. We could call it a party in your 4th house. Specifically for Geminis with early placements, this party is in your 4th house. For you middle to later degree placements, it's going to take until later in the month of August or into September for this party in your 4th house to really become prominent. The way that I'm explaining this right now is really strong for me to get this point across, is by thinking of a marching band. You'll hear me talk about early, middle, and late degree placements, and sometimes that's confusing. And I'm sorry for adding the element of confusion, but in order to educate you about the importance of knowing this, I have to take the time to do it, because your horoscope as an early Gemini placement looks completely different than your horoscope as a late degree Gemini placement. And so much so, in fact, that you might consider, if you have a late degree placement, so if your birthday is later in the astrological month, or if your rising sign or whatever, if your moon sign is later, like around 20 degrees or higher, between 20 and 29 degrees, you might consider also listening to the Cancer report. And when I say early Cancer, that's also very much like the late Gemini. And you'll pick up pieces there. I would also listen to the Gemini, but you're going to pick up pieces in that report that's going to be a little bit more current for you. Now I explain it and say, okay, this is coming a little later for you, but we're talking about the month of August. And so the things happening for early Cancers that we're talking about for the month of August are really also happening for late Geminis in that time frame. So back to the marching band. So if you have this stretch of streets where there's people waiting for a marching band to come in, and it's coming from this direction, and we have the early Gemini placements, the middle Gemini placements, and the late Gemini placements. And so when the marching band is getting close, all of the Gemini placements, the people on the street, will hear it, will feel it. There's some sort of experience from the transits, but for the later degree placements, it's kind of more in the distance. It's like you hear the band coming. As soon as the band is in front of the early degree placements, that's front and center for them, it's getting closer to the middle degree placement, so it's bubbling up more, the excitement is increasing, the relevancy is increasing, and then it's still a little bit more in the distance for the later degree placements. So then as it moves along and it's current for the later degree placements, the early degree placements are on to the post show, you know, and that's what's coming up next for them. So it's like this movement through this, this sign, and that's why it shifts the timing of how you experience things. It staggers. So for planets that take a short amount of time to move around, like those closer to the sun, like the sun also, and Venus and Mercury, which are some of the players at this party for the early degree placements in your 4th house. The rest of you, some of you middle degree Gemini placements and later degree placements, have this party in your 3rd house. But we'll talk about more details about that. But the this marching band is, you know, is like being very loud for your early degree placements in the 4th house. And the 4th house is all about home. It's all about family. It's all about your roots. It's all about your psychology, the psychology of your childhood that brings you current to today. So when we have a party, we'll call it a party in Leo. Okay, so I always think about a gathering of astrological planets as a party. And like at a party, you have individual personalities at the party that make up the total vibe of the party. So you've got Venus, you've got Mercury, you've got the sun, you've got the new moon, all as these members that, and also Jupiter for part of the time, in this sign of Leo. Okay, so their personalities is the planet or the event, like the new moon. It brings a certain energy. The mood they're in is Leo. It's festive. It's super festive. And the house it's in is where the party's at. Okay, so the party's at, for you early and some of you middle degree placements, in this house of home and expansion. And the party's at this 3rd house of transportation and communication and getting your work out to the world and sharing information, information coming in, information going out, things with your siblings, things with some of your other relatives, all active, things involving your car, boats, transportation of any kind in the 3rd house. So what I was starting to say earlier is that when you have these planets that move slower, the timeline for how long it takes them to move from the early degree planets to the late degree planets is short because they move really quickly. But when you talk about a planet like Jupiter, which is about to switch signs, that takes 12 years to move around. So it has a longer stretch of time that it takes about a year for it to get to the late degree placements after it was already affecting the early degree placements. So the longer it takes a planet to go around, the longer the late degree placements have to wait to really feel that energy. So there's these multiple facets of experience going on in home, things having to do with actual houses, real estate, things having to do with your family members, things having to do with your family members of origin, people in your household. And that's really current for the early degree placements. Then again, like I said, these middle to later degree placements, you're having this cluster in the 3rd house. Whenever you have a cluster in the 3rd house, this is actually your house. This is the 3rd house of Gemini. It's busy, 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 busy. So earlier degree placements might have gone through this major busyness leading up until August, and then maybe things start to settle down and get very homebound, very home focused in August, where now the later middle and middle degree placements are having this just nonstop action, information coming in, information going out, going here, busy, 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 busy. So that is very much what the general scene of August looks like. Also, we have to remember that Venus is in retrograde. Venus went retrograde on July 25th. It's retrograde through September 6th or 7th, depending on where you are. There was a shadow period that started at the end of June that ran through the end of July when the retrograde actually started. And there's a post-shadow period from around September 6th or 7th until the first week of October. Venus retrograde is so critical to understand because it rules love and beauty and money. And love and money are 2 topics that are the most asked about in readings. When people have readings with me, always love and money are on that list in some form. And Venus rules those planets. We don't hear about it as much as Mercury retrograde because it doesn't happen as often as Mercury retrograde does. Mercury retrograde happens 3 or 4 times a year, and we are covered in Mercury retrograde energy either through post or pre-shadow or the actual transit for like 26 weeks out of the year, half the year really. But Venus retrograde only happens once every year and a half over like a 4-month cycle. So you don't know as much about Venus retrograde because it's not as current as often. So I made a separate video called Venus retrograde that I highly recommend you look at the do's and don'ts and actually like need to know things. I send out to my community, my email newsletter list will receive in the month before a write-up of the month coming. Besides just the horoscopes, I do a write-up. And the focus for August was Venus, it's called Venus Retrograde Survival Guide. And you really need to know these things. So I'm not talking about them here because I don't have enough time to do that, but definitely watch that video, which you can find on my channel. Okay, so now we have to talk about Jupiter changing signs. So like I said, Jupiter has an orbit of about 12 years. So it last had a sign change last summer. It moved into Leo. And for you early and some of you middle degree placements, you've spent the last year with a huge focus having Jupiter expanding your third house, expanding your blogs, expanding your prolific communication on every level, expanding your speaking opportunities within your job or with work you're trying to cultivate, expanding your busyness, traveling around, expanding relationships with certain of your relatives, expanding how you transport yourself, more boats and bikes and cars and what that looks like, taking more trips. So you've had this year of really solid Jupiter expansion in this house, and now Jupiter's getting ready to expand your fourth house. For you late degree placements, you've still had Jupiter expanding your second house of finances and assessing value of things, and now you late degree placements are really just starting what I just explained of Jupiter expanding your third house of communication and the siblings and all of these things. So you're about to embark on the growth and the opportunities and the benevolence that Jupiter brings in that third house. But for you early degree placements, you're really, and you might have already felt this because since Jupiter takes a long time to go around, sometimes the months leading up to it actually changing signs, you're feeling the effects of it beforehand. I know sensitive people really will notice this. I can feel this happening at least 3 months before Jupiter gets into a certain placement. It really starts to get strong, and you notice, especially if you know it's coming. It's like, oh wow, I can see this really coming into my life. And some of you might have started to feel it a little earlier. So what does it look like when Jupiter expands your fourth house? All of you Geminis need to know this because whether it's going to happen, like really starting to happen now, or whether it's coming next year, you'll want to know that it's on the agenda, even if it's at a later point for you. Jupiter adds 2 things. So let's say you have a house, then Jupiter comes into your fourth house of homes, and sometimes you get a second house, or sometimes your house gets bigger, or sometimes members of your household get added to. I've seen all kinds of different ways that Jupiter can add to someone's home. We have to remember that the experience of these planets is subjective. So even though Jupiter makes things bigger and more expansive and just more room, that subjective experience of more room and expansion is different for different people at different times. So an example of that is some Geminis are going to experience a bigger house. Like Jupiter comes in and brings them a bigger home, period. The square footage is actually bigger, okay? Some people who've had this bigger home, maybe their kids have moved out, maybe their finances have changed, maybe they had been experiencing their mortgage as heavy on them and devoting a lot of their time working to paying for their mortgage, they'll downsize when Jupiter is in their fourth house. And their feeling of home is expanded even though the actual size of their home is smaller because they feel more big in their home. Some people will move to the city because it's expansive to them at that time to have all the things cities offer. Some people will move to the country because that is more open for them. You see, it's very subjective, but there's so many different ways this can look. Some people will have their kids get married, and so they have now their daughter and son-in-laws in their family. Their family's gotten bigger. Some people actually have more people move into their house, including their partner. Maybe you have a partner who you don't live with. When Jupiter's in that house, very likely you'll move in together. You know, if you're moving along that track, then your household size increases. Sometimes that household size increases with another child. Sometimes the household size increases with pets and roommates or things like that. If you're in real estate, this is like amazing for real estate because this rules houses. So definitely look to the Venus retrograde video to see about certain timing of it not being good to do certain things when Venus is in retrograde, but this is a theme for the year, not just for August. It's starting in August. So let's see, some people, like I said, will have a second home. Maybe you have a home and then you wind up getting a cabin somewhere else. You know, this home is expanded. Maybe I remember one incident where someone had this in there and I saw it coming that their home space was somehow going to be expanded. They bought their family farm. And that's a really great example. You know, the farm is a bigger place to live than they lived. It's a farm, it's big, right? But it also expands their roots of their connection to their family line. Some people will get super deep into their ancestry or focus on their family, whatever that looks like. So that is a big piece of what's coming as a major trend. So we have a new moon for your earlier degree placements, this is going to be in the 4th house. So a new chapter opening, again, in this home and family party that we're having. The other placements are going to experience this new moon in the 3rd house. So new chapter involving traveling, communication devices, you know, using new technology to expand your communication. It's mind-boggling how fast technology related to communicating and getting information out there and sharing information, how fast that is just getting more and more expanded. And so there's new opportunities that can really assist your business, and you might be learning about these things during this time. The 3rd house is also the house of learning, so you might pick up a new learning project or start to learn a new skill with this new moon. And this new moon is really exciting too, because it's the first new moon in several months that is not encumbered by heavy madness. We've had just like, crazy multi-layered challenges associated with some of the previous new moons, that it's like they've been stealing the thunder of this new moon. This is the first new moon in a while that it's like, okay, we can just let the new moon be fabulous, right? And not have it be dogged by these other transits. Then we have a full moon on August 29th in Pisces, and full moons are always emotional anyway, and a full moon in a water sign like Pisces can be even more emotional. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Something can come to fruition in the Pisces area of your life, or in the area of your life that what house the full moon is happening in for you. So, you know, sometimes we associate full moons with negative drama or things that are challenging, but it doesn't really have to always be that way, and it's not always that way. Sometimes it's something coming to fruition or recognition, and for you early degree placements, this is actually happening in your 10th house of career and work and life purpose. So if you are in a line of work where that expansion in your 3rd house that has been happening for you early placements, you know, of communicating, sharing information, you might have some event that reaches a culmination, a project, or I don't want to say a new project because you don't really want to launch anything when Venus is in retrograde. You can see the video for more on that, but a coming to completion or fruition of something, of being recognized for your work. The 10th house is very much about recognition and your place in the outer world. So fullness coming there. The rest of you placements, so early and some middle are going to experience the fullness in the 10th house. The rest of the middle and the late placements, you're going to have this full moon happen for you in the 9th house. And this is the house of the bigger picture. So a lot of times people will have some sort of test to something that they believe strongly. An example of this, the topic of whether to eat meat or not is very, very supercharged, and it's very present for many people. And when I think of this full moon, and I'm just thinking of some examples of certain people that I know who, while they were pregnant, they did not, or before they were pregnant, they did not eat animal protein. And then while they were pregnant, their doctors were advising them, and I'm not saying this is true for everyone, I know that people can have a perfectly healthy vegetarian or vegan birthing process, and I don't have a judgment or opinion that something is any one way. Everyone is different, and there's room for everyone's experience here. But this 9th house fullness is like testing something strongly that you believe, that you have maybe judged others for, that you felt so strongly and just been blocked in something. This full moon could test something like that, where for several of these women that I'm thinking of, they were getting sick and their doctors were telling them your blood counts are going down and this is happening. I had this personally happen to me as well, that you have to make a decision between the health of your baby and this belief that you have. That's a really big deal. But that's an example of what this can look like something that you really believe in, that you've put a lot of weight and energy into, is tested in some way. And you may or may not decide to change your mind about it, but it's like this welling up, this fullness involving a belief being tested. Or it could be coming to fruition of something you've been studying, you've been learning, a different chapter. Someone could be graduating, something like that, because this is also the house of education. Or fullness coming to an international project or something involving people from different countries or cultures, or travel there. So these are the things that are going on in August affecting Geminis. I can't see what's going on in your personal chart. That will always flavor these things that I discuss. If you'd like to have a personal reading, you can go to my website, aspiritualspark.com, or click on the link below this video, and you can see more about my live coaching. Also, you can see more about my 28-day virtual coaching program called Shine, which has 28 videos and 28 podcasts over this moon cycle that you decide, whenever you're ready to decide, do it. And it just is so powerful for helping you clear out the programs that are interfering with you shining. And that's available on a sliding scale. And definitely, if you have money issues or problems, check out my Unleash Your Money Magnet webinar. It's over 2 hours of power-packed information and effective clearing techniques to change your money paradigms. So, and while you're there, sign up for my free email newsletter and become part of my community. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.